All right, let's get started. My name is Reed Elliott. I'm a developer on the Analytics Developer Experience team, and we're going to talk about Salesforce DX and using Salesforce DX to build Einstein analytics applications. So,
Hi, my name is Skip Sauls. I work on the product management team, working on Salesforce DX and other features. And Reed's going to mostly do the presentation today. I'm here to maybe add some commentary and take your questions. We've also got some architects and developers back here at this table who are available for questions after the session. So Reed?
All right, so just the forward-looking statement you've seen, just make sure you make any purchasing decisions based on what's out there today. Okay, so Salesforce DX has been around. It's been available for a few releases now. So out of the people here, how many are using or have used Salesforce DX? Okay, so a few. So more and more customers, partners are moving to this development model. And on the analytics side, we've done a lot of work just to make sure that the metadata types that we support are available and working through Salesforce DX. So you can use those assets to go back and forth. So I'm going to give a quick overview. So a lot of you have used Salesforce DX, some haven't, but I'm going to give a quick overview of some of the key concepts in Salesforce DX. And I'm also going to give a little bit of an overview. This isn't a session on analytics apps and templates, but I am using analytics apps and templates in this demo. And so I'm going to give a brief overview of why we want to use analytics templates for this type of development process. And then I'm also going to go over a newly released analytics CLI plugin. So if you use the CLI today, you know kind of what's available with it. Now there's a new analytics plugin we just released that'll help that experience. And then so about half of this is going to be going over some of these concepts, and then half I'm going to go through a demo. Okay, so typically in Salesforce, everything revolves around an org. You know, whether you're a partner in production with sandboxes attached, or you're a partner who's using their DE orgs to kind of manage packages, but everything historically has been in the org. With DX, that's shifting, and now the source of truth is becoming a VCS system of your choice. The Salesforce DX also, some of you are familiar with the powerful command line interface. That really simplifies development and allows you to, create and manage your workspace and your org. It allows you to synchronize source to and from the org down to your workspace. It allows you to do importing and exporting of data, creating and executing tests, and creating and installing packages all through this command line interface. Scratch orgs. So scratch orgs are a way to quickly spin up a Salesforce environment the way you want it to look. So for example, for analytics, there's a lot of stuff that you need to do to make analytics happen in an org. You have to enable licenses. You can now specify this development wave scratch org feature in your scratch org config, and then you spin up from the command line an org that is ready to work with analytics applications. So these scratch orgs are source-driven, configurable, and when you're done with them, throw them away. It's not meant to be a long-living source of truth. You pull it out of the scratch org, check it into your version control system. With the CLI, it makes continuous delivery a lot easier. You can run tests. You can still kind of use what you're used to using, but you can integrate it with the CLI to make it much easier. Okay, I have a slide here about analytics templates. We've had some other sessions that have gone in more into depth about analytics templates, but analytics templates are really what you should be using to build analytics applications. It's bundling up a collection of assets, the data flows, the data sets, and code and rules that can be used to allow you to do a custom install of the application. So there's a lot of other reasons to use analytics templates, but one of the most important is that it does allow you to do a custom install. All the orgs are different. They have different data, different features. And so by using templates, you can have a little wizard that pops up, and you can answer questions, and you can custom answer those questions and allow the app to be installed the way you want it to be installed. Again, templates also, you can have the full development lifecycle. They can be added to a package and sent out, distributed that way. And so I added this slide because in the examples I'm using, Wave Template Bundle is the metadata type for templates. And that's what I'm going to be focusing on for showing the development lifecycle of DX with analytics. Okay, so again, DX overview. This is your code. You've worked with it for a long time, whether it's been through metadata API in your DE org, but getting started with DX should be pretty simple. There's a feature called Developer Hub. You can enable that in your DE Edition trial org, production org. Download the Salesforce CLI, then install the analytics plugin, which I'll show you in a couple slides how to do. Then you can authenticate to the Dev Hub through the CLI, and then start creating scratch orgs and pushing your metadata to and from and making changes and checking it in. Okay, so those of you familiar with DX, this is a screenshot of the SFDX force top-level command. And so this is, you'll see me using this in the demos, and this is sort of a top-level command structure to allow you to work with your workspace and orgs. From here, you can see there's, force org, force package, force source, and we'll be using these to interact with the scratch orgs. So this is also meant to be self-documenting. If you can run SFDX force help, or you can narrow down to each command, it'll kind of tell you how to use it, what to do with it. So now for the analytics plugin, this is how you install it. So it's SFDX plugins install at Salesforce Analytics. That will install the analytics plugin directly into your CLI environment. And you can see here, when I ran SFDX a second time now, you can see the analytics as a top-level command. And just like any other command, you can run help, and you can see the different topics. So here we have 2 next-level topics for working with analytics apps, and then next with working on templates. And we have CRUD operations for both apps and templates to make this just a lot easier to work with. So if you've worked with apps and templates before in the REST APIs, this is just a layer on top to make working with it a lot easier. Okay, so I'm going to jump into a demo in just a second, but before I do that, I kind of wanted to go over the scenario that I'm going to be going through. So in my environment, I have a workspace. I've already installed the CLI, which I kind of showed on the last screen, also how to install the analytics plugin. So for this demo, we'll kind of simulate maybe you're a partner that has a DE edition org with a Wave template bundle that they have in there that they've been developing on in that org. So what I'll do is I've authenticated to a developer hub, then I authenticate to this DE org. And once I have that org, I can, through metadata API commands in the CLI plugin, I can pull that Wave template bundle out of the DE org onto my file system. Once I do that, I've retrieved the data. Then I'm going to run a convert command that it converts it to SFDX format. And then at that point, I can create scratch orgs and push this metadata into the scratch org. That's all general SFDX stuff with analytics resources. But then I'll demonstrate some of these new commands available with this CLI plugin. All right, lastly, before I just wanted to, so I might end with the demo, so I get to this. Here's a getting started guide. We have some cards over at the booth with this information on it. It's the Einstein Analytics demo booth over here as well. But this is a GitHub page and some examples that you could just quickly clone and go through an example yourself. So if what I'm doing doesn't make exact sense, that you can kind of see how that works with an example. Also, there's a session tomorrow, the Intro to Analytics Developer Experience. Here's the cards that I mentioned. So that's a good way if you want to play with this, just run it, get it going yourself. And this session tomorrow will go way more in depth into analytics templates and working with those. And okay, so I'm going to jump into the demo next. Okay, so this is a repository that I've created. I'm just going to open. To make this a little bigger. Let's see. There we go. Okay, so I've put a few cheat sheet notes for myself of what I'm going to go through, but this is a workspace, an SFDX workspace that I've cloned. Same thing you could create locally. And the interesting things in here is I have a scratch org definition. This is what I'm going to use to create scratch orgs. And notice that I've specified the development wave feature. So when the scratch org gets created, it'll have analytics enabled and ready to work with. I can just push this wave template bundle into the org. Oops. Okay, the next thing is the SFDX project JSON. Not much here. It's just telling me the paths and where things go, and that I'm pointing to a Salesforce production instance. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run a command. So this lists the orgs that I've connected to. And as you can see, I have my developer hub that I've connected to. I also have this org with I've given an alias dev org. This is the DE org where my wave template bundle currently lives. I also have one scratch org here just in case this demo doesn't work for some reason, but I don't plan on using this org. I plan on creating a new one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this command first. So what this is doing is it's doing a metadata retrieve to the org that I've labeled dev org, and it's going to retrieve the metadata and put it in a directory called metadata, which should show up here on the left side in a second. Okay, so I'm going to navigate, and I'm going to unzip. Okay, so this pulled out two wave template bundles, one called My App, one called Mortgage Calculator, and it put it into the metadata directory. Next, I'm going to run this command called sfdx force MD API convert. So this is taking the metadata that I just pulled out of my org, and it's converting it into sfdx format under this force app directory. And if I drill down, I can see wave templates, these two wave templates with all of the metadata associated of. This one has some external files. It's going to load a CSV data. So pretty basic apps, but shows kind of the power of what you can do. So now I've loaded, now I'm going to create a scratch org. And I'm pointing to that scratch org definition that I showed earlier that had the development wave feature. So when this org gets spun up real time, it's going to be ready to work with wave or analytics. Okay, so now I have the org. So now I'm going to run a command for source push. So this is taking the contents that I just converted in force app and pushing it to the scratch org, which is a wave template bundle. Now I have all this data. So now this analytics CLI plugin is useful. So I can run a command and I can see I have two analytics templates that are pushed in my org. I haven't logged into the org yet, but I've pushed this metadata. So one thing about a template is you can create an app from a template. So I'm going to do that next. And I'm going to give it the template ID here. And so this is the same thing if I was going into Studio and clicked and create an app from a template. This is the same thing, except for I'm doing it from the command line. So I'm going to do the same thing to the second app. And so this is, again, kicking off that asynchronous process. So now if I run app list, I have two apps created. The mortgage calculator, that one's already done. This My App, it relies on some CSV data, so it needs to run that data flow to get everything into the data set. So that one's going to take a little longer. But now what I'm going to do is open the org. Okay, so I'm getting the welcome banner. This is the first time I've been in here, but you can see I already have these applications. And if I go over to the apps screen, this app is still kind of going through the process of doing what it needs to do. So at this point, I can go ahead, if I wanted to do development, I can associate these apps as the master app of my template. So I'm going to do that from the command line instead of through the REST API. So if I wanted to do first, I'll list these templates. And notice they're not associated with an app at this point. So if I run and I'll update the mortgage no, I'll do this first. Next, I'm going to do the mortgage calculator one first. Okay, so now this application is now tied to this template. So now I can go do real development in my org on this. So I might want to go in to the mortgage calculator, and I might want to add a page. So I can add it in. Okay, and I'm going to save it. So now if I go back to command, I want to pull all of this data back and check it in so the next developer can use this change for their development process. So I can run in here, it found what I had changed and added it to my file system. Some of the things, I did create some other applications and dashboards, but it also found the changes to the mortgage calculator. And so now all those changes I made are on the file system. I can check it into Git or whatever VCS of your choice, and the next developer, I can be done with this scratch org. That's the only change I need to make. The next person can go clone it, push it, and do future changes. And so this is the model we'd love to see people to start using, especially the analytics developers. So that ends the demo. We're going to be hanging out over here. If anyone wants to come ask some questions, we'd love to talk to you. Thank you.
We got quick start.
Yeah, exactly. That quick start guide would be a great place to kind of go through what I did, but you can do it on your own environment very easily.
Yeah.